Witchy and Weird podcast.
Hello, Witchy and Weird. I'm back again for another solo episode on the video, and I'm still getting used to it, but here we are. So I have a few announcements before we get into the whole shebang. Number one, beating, sorry. Number one is to, if you know that meme, God bless you, by the way. That's like our biggest stim in the household with me and my partner. We're just like number 5. So anyways, let me just get back to what even I was saying. So updates. There's 3 updates. Number one is this quarterly Patreon box is in transit for y'all. I am putting everything together and waiting for the stickers to arrive, and then I'm going to send them out. Along with that, because this podcast is more of a labor of love right now in terms of time and commitment versus money I'm being reimbursed for my time and commitment, I'm just going to be paring things down. So I do want to bring back, the subscription boxes, but just right now it's a lot for me to handle. So the people that ordered for this quarter are going to get their boxes, and I'm just going to simplify everything across the board. You can support me financially for this podcast. Right now, currently on Patreon, I'm just going to have simple baseline amount, and in Patreon you can choose to donate more than the baseline, and you'll just get a shout out on the Patreon. Shout out to Emma, our day 1 patron. And I will also, on Spotify, you can now, I was like buffering in my mind, sorry. On Spotify, you can also support podcast people. So I'm going to enable that function. It will be enabled so you can, if you listen on Spotify, you can go through, or Anchor. Anchor. That's all in our link in bio, and I'll put the link in the show notes. So you can just give money that way if you don't want to do with Patreon. None of these are subscription based. And then on Anchor, all of the money goes to me. Patreon, percentage of the money goes to me. And I'm also going to set up, I believe it's pronounced a Ko-fi. I don't know if it's Ko-fi or Ko-fi. If you're just like, I don't have money to give every month, which again, you can cancel after 1 month for both of those things. I just want to give a payment right now to buy me a coffee, to buy me whatever to support. That is totally up to you. And again, as always, support in the form of Apple reviews, of Spotify reviews, of leaving a review on your Instagram, on your social media, and tagging us, telling your friends, hey, listen to this podcast, it is freaking amazing. That is how our podcast gets larger and the revolution grows. And then the third announcement is pretty fun. So I've been wanting to do a once a month segment with another creator, and I was looking for, actually this is number 2. I lied. There is still one other one. For a creator, like an astrology based creator or something that's like reading the energies. I do know some astrology, but I am not an expert by any means. So I've been looking for somebody to do once a month astrology, check-ins, forecasts, and it looks like I found somebody. So we're going to be doing new moon. It'll be a separate bonus episode each month that will kind of talk about the energy of the new moon and some of the transits and things that are going to be coming on. And we'll be talking psychically. We'll probably pull cards or something just to give advice for the different signs, and to just chat it up, because they're actually somebody I have known for a long time, and I'm really excited. So that's something new that will be coming to the podcast. As I just said, I'm going to try and cut back on the work that I'm doing. I'm adding a new thing in true manifesting generator fashion. And then the number 3, this is actually for real, the number 3. I have been wanting to do something else I've been wanting to do with the podcast is to give y'all the ability to submit questions to me whether it is what kind of content you want me to talk about or you want to see, or submitting like a person you would love to have interviewed on the podcast, or and what I really want it to be used for is to submit questions that you would like me to answer, that I can like add as like a section at the end of the solo podcast episodes. So, because I don't want to take up like the guest spotlight in time. But on the solo episodes, like if you want me to psychically tap in about something, if you want advice on something, if you want to hear my perspective on something, I'll pick like one question per episode to do that. And so on Anchor, again, all this stuff will be linked. They have an option for fans to submit a video question, or no, not a video, an audio question. And so I can do that, or I can just make like a Google form for that. I think Google form would probably be best. So there'll be a Google form linked at the end of this episode, and it'll be in our link in bio. So please submit your Google form questions. Again, if you want to see a specific topic, if you want to have a specific guest, please put that there. And if you have a specific question that you would like for me to answer or to elaborate on or to provide insight on, that would be amazing. And again, one person will be picked. They're going to be picked on, based off of like what I'm drawn to answer. Like if you're like, what's your favorite food? Or if you're like, hey, can you tell me if I'm ever going to be rich in my lifetime? We'll see. And then there'll be an option if you want it to be anonymous or not. Okay, so with all that being said, now let's get into the actual episode. So what I learned during Mercury retrograde. Woo! I kind of compiled like a list of things that I have been working on that have been coming up for me lately. As y'all know, I've mentioned on the podcast before, I want to make this more of a personal space where I'm sharing my personal stuff, because I believe like transparency about magic, about being a practitioner, about healing is really important, right? Like I'm not fully healed and I'm just giving you advice. Like I'm working through shit along with you. And I want this to be more of a community thing. So I want to try and share like what's coming up for me, like in the moment, lately, because maybe it was coming up for you too. I feel like most of my solo episodes are like that anyways, but rude, Alexa, nobody was talking to you. But I feel like doing these kind of like recap things for me feels more vulnerable, because it's like way more specific, because it's lots of small things that have been going, or big things in my life, but lots of small examples of things that have been going on. So I've prepared 5 things. Hopefully it will be an hour's worth of stuff. I always get worried that there's never going to be enough stuff to talk about when I'm writing the solo episodes. So let's get into it. So, number 1 is about capitalism, entrepreneurship, experiencing, ideating. So, this one's like PSA for all you creators out there. So, as an entrepreneur and a creator, an ideator, an artist, whatever term resonates with you, I'm constantly getting ideas for things that I want to create, things that I think would be cool, experiences like in my business. And with capitalism and kind of like the system I was raised under, where we're kind of taught like, oh, if you have a great idea, turn that into money, right? I have this habit of taking my cool ideas or things that I wanted to create, or even like processes that I wanted to learn, because I don't really talk about this too much, but I have a Gemini stellium and Gemini rules the hands. I feel like when I share astrology stuff, it's like, so this is why I like this, but it's like the reverse. It's like I'm like this and this is what I learned. Astrology supports that. This is my proof. Not that my lived experience is proof enough, right? But anyways, I like to create stuff with my hands. I went to college and I did like an interdisciplinary degree. I learned like graphic design, computer programming. I learned like fine art, like drawing. I'm actually really good if I try really hard. I used to get archived a lot. That's something I'm very proud of because I was always self-conscious about my art. So my inner child just needed y'all to know that. Um, and I've learned dabbled in a little bit of sewing and stuff, but I also worked at a wood shop slash metal shop slash digital fabrication lab. And I made stuff. So I welded things, I made like woodworking things, I laser cut stuff, and it was really fun. And when I first started my business, I made crochet. Like it's all making things with my hands, right? Like I love cooking. That's making things with my hands. I literally almost applied for cooking school when I graduated from high school. Like I wanted to be a chef. Um, so needless to say, I love doing things with my hands. Um, and where was I going with this? So I'm always having ideas about like processes that I want to learn, right? Like I see all these people making like those cool rugs. I see people making, oh geez, let me adjust the light. That just adjust. I have my lights to turn on at like sundown time, but I made them like fancy cool colors and now it just changed. So for everybody who is not watching what's going on, that's what's going on right now. I'm shifting the lights and oh, this is not the right one to shift. And then this one and this one. Okay, cool. Um, Hopefully that's the right TV bottom. Oh, I'm all sixes and sevens. There we go. Now it's the right color. Okay, so I see all those people making like rugs, and I see all those people making like electroform jewelry and like pottery. Not really so much pottery. I don't know why I said that right now. Just like making lots of cool stuff, right? Like I have an apothecary business where I make products already. I make candles, I make oils, I make smoke cleansing wands, I make mists. But I'm always like wanting to learn and make more stuff. That's just something about me. Like Gemini always wants to learn, wants to work with their hands. I've just always really been artistic in that way and wanting to learn. Like I paint personal art all the time. I make graphic design stuff for Redbubble. That's like not even part of my business, but it's just I need to make stuff because I love creating stuff. Um, so I have this habit. Wow, that was a really long tangent. Sorry, everyone. I have this habit of I have all these ideas like constantly. Like I'm very connected with, oh, that'd be cool. Oh, we should do that. Oh. And I had this habit of like immediately taking the idea and saying, but how can I incorporate this into my business? How can I make this into something that I can profit off of? That would people like this in my business? You know, even with like offerings for like services, I'd be like, oh, this would be a cool thing. Oh, let me make it into a thing instead of like, is this something I want to do? Is this something I'm actually really invested in that lights me up? Or I'm just thinking, you know, I found out the more I delved into this, is this motivated by fear? Is this motivated by wanting to make money and stability? Like fear is kind of tied into that, right? Is this motivated by my capitalist program of being taught we should turn everything into a money making machine? And I kind of got like really, I don't know what the term would be. I fell out of love with like the creative process, right? Because everything was becoming work. And it felt like I was always playing catch up because I have so many ideas and I wasn't able to create all of them for money, for time, just in general. And because of my programming, like, let me make this into like, let me explore if this can make me money. I felt like I was tied to like seeing these ideas to fruition instead of saying like, actually, no, I don't want to do that thing. And so that's why it always felt like I was like playing catch up pretty much, right? And so I had a meeting of the minds, meeting of the intuition with my cosmic team to ask them for advice. And they kind of like showed me with this one example that I always talk about, something like the whole thing and why I'm bringing this up, right? So I want to have a physical space where I can create like healing experiences in person with people. One of the healing experiences that I would love to create for people that I've wanted to for a long time is those fancy ritual baths with like fresh picked flowers and bath salts and all that kind of stuff, because you can't really ship those kinds of experiences to other people like fresh flowers. It would have to be dried. It's all different. So I was like, yeah, I really want to make this experience for people. I think it's so cool, and I'm just gonna have to wait because I don't have my in-person shop yet. Oh, guess I'm just gonna have to wait for the rest of my life, right? And my guides were like, well, but you have all the tools right now to make a fancy ritual bath. Like, why don't you just do one for yourself? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I want to create this experience for other people. Like, I think it's really cool. And they're like, but why can't you also experience it? What if you don't actually want to create this experience for other people and you want to create your soul just like was connected to this idea because it wants to experience that thing. It wants to have that experience. And I was like, whoa, because I felt like the more that I'm looking at a lot of the things in my life and like, oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, I want to create that for my business. And then eventually I'll do that for my business. That it's like, maybe my soul just wants to experience these things. Like, this is why I brought up the Gemini thing. This is how it all ties in. Maybe I just want to keep learning how to make all these different creative things and explore the process. Like, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm a 3/5 manifesting generator. So it's about three, I don't know if I say it as a fraction, 3/5. And I like for me it's about the process. I learn through doing. So it's like I just want to experience what it's like to make a rug, a cool fancy rug. Maybe I want to experience what it's like to electroform jewelry, to work with resin. And it's not about will this make me money? It's just I want to explore that, right? And that's a very ADHD thing as well, like getting really into learning very niche, expensive processes. And it's part of like my creativeness. I love learning new things so that I can incorporate them together and make new creations for things. So when my guides kind of showed me that, it really blew my mind. Like it truly did, because it showed me, number one, the capitalist like programming and how ingrained it was in my thought process and in a lot of the guilt that I was creating for myself for not being able to create products like quickly enough or create ideas or services quickly enough as I received them. But also for some of y'all, like if you're not an entrepreneur, like this can be applied. Like maybe you're always like, oh, I wish I could make this thing for my friend. Oh, I only cook really nice meals when I'm with my partner, right? Like maybe these are experiences that we want to have, but we don't think that we're worthy of spending the time and money and energy and effort and love on them, right? Because I feel like for me, part of it was capitalism, part of it was that like, oh yeah, I would love to create these like beautiful healing baths for people, and I have all these resources at my fingertips. I wouldn't have to spend any extra money because I already have bath salts. I make bath salts in my business, like ritual bath soaks. I forage a lot of my like flowers and things like that from my neighborhood, so I can just go out in my neighborhood and get some rose petals. And I have a diffuser, I have like music, like I had all the things. It's like, why am I not creating this for myself? Because I didn't think that I was worthy. Like I wanted people to experience it because I feel like they're more worthy than me of experiencing it. So that's kind of like the first thing that I've been learning, unlearning, going through is like recognizing, is this actually something I want to do? What do I want to do it for? Um, and like, is this, like deeper questioning, like, do I want to make this for somebody else? Do I actually want to just experience this for myself? Like, and really unpacking, like, why don't I think like I deserve to spend 2 hours cooking a meal, and only when I'm with my partner then I deserve to spend this, time and money and energy. So like really unpacking, probably a lot of it is going to be tied to like scarcity or financial or like worthiness wounds and things like that. But it's still like really enlightening to look at our actions and our thoughts behind the actions, to unpack like how they're tied to us and our beliefs. So hopefully that helps like somebody. Obviously, that's why I'm sharing this whole thing. But yeah, some food for thought, right? Okay, so number two is to question everything periodically. And this is something that I'm a really huge fan of. I'm Jewish, and one of like the Jewish ideals or beliefs is to like question everything. Um, that's why when people are like 13, they have their bar or bat mitzvah, because that's considered in the Jewish law or culture or religion, the age at which children can start to like critical think and question things and start to like find answers and question things for themselves. So, um, as humans, we're like creatures of habit, right? So if we find a routine that feels familiar, we're going to want to stick to that. And it might not even be the best for us, but it's familiar. So we might stick to that. And I was recently reminded of this during retrograde when I had a falling out with like this culty coach that I worked with. And I realized that like I was started reviewing and looking back on all the different coaches that I've worked with or mentors that I've worked with throughout my entrepreneurial career, and how definitely a lot more when I started out, I was like very naive, but how I put a lot of like faith into the people that were guiding me without questioning so much of like what what their like qualifications are, what their authority is. And in the new age spiritual communities, like when I was first learning, there was a lot of like, we'll just go with your intuition, go with your gut. If that person excites you, if that person triggers you, then you should work with them. And those are really like disempowering things to teach people. Like, I am a manifesting generator, and so I know that I get really excited in the moment. So it might be a complete full body yes, feel like a full body yes for me in the moment, but it's not the best for me to just like, okay, now I'm going to jump into this like $10,000 program because I'm feeling really excited right now. And I think that there's like a level of manipulation that some coaches like play on that, where it's like, trust your intuition. Like, how are you feeling right now in the moment? Well, yeah, you just took me on a journey in this sales pitch. Like, to feel into what I want so deeply. So of course I'm feeling like really lit up and really excited, but I should take some time and think about this and realize that this is like actually something I want to truly invest in. Um and this kind of like bled into like listening to like mentors word for word. If they're successful, then I'm going to do, exactly what they say. And that's even for like my psychic mentors and things like that. Like, I took stuff so literally, and when it was hard for me to like find that connection or like get on board with the visualization that they shared, it was really like tough, because I was like, oh, it's not working for me, and I would get frustrated because I'm just trying and trying to do exactly what they said instead of leaving space for my intuition to come through and do what works best for me. And so with this whole thing, it reminded me like it is a good thing to question periodically everything that you were taught and things in your life, right? Like, not everything is a one size fits all for people, and like what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. What worked for you a month ago might not work for you now, or 5 years ago, right? Or maybe it like kind of works, but you want to shift into something different, right? So like, I kind of think of it as like, how jobs, they have a like a yearly review type of thing. Like, that type of behavior, that type of mindset would be good to embody, to employ, especially if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, thinking about your business, but thinking about your life too. Why am I doing this? What is this thing that I'm doing? Who told me to do this thing? Why do I put importance in this thing? Do I really enjoy this daily routine that I've set up for myself, this habit that I've formed, right? And questioning yourself periodically, um and the things that we just kind of, oh, well, somebody else told me and they were an authority figure, so I just listened to them blindly because I was raised in a school system that taught me to listen to authority figures blindly. I wonder why. That's another story for a different time. But you kind of get what I'm saying, right? So it's good to question everything. It's Jewish to question everything. But just thinking about that for little things or for big things, I think it's really empowering and really impactful. Okay. So, number 3, something that came up for me when I was repricing my offerings, about like the questioning everything that kind of came up, was when I stopped, when I was questioning the previous coaches. I actually skipped over this part. When I was questioning my previous coaches, like the pricing in my business came up, and it was like, why do I offer this pricing? Like, what did I learn for the pricing? And I made a post like on my service account, on my main account, about like the new like pricing that I would have that was less than what it previously was, because like I was just taught from like multiple people to kind of like price intuitively, like pick a number, and then just like every time I would pick a number, they're like, no, 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 you got to charge way more. You're not charging enough. And it's like, I, this came from somebody else to tell me to do that, not me. And then part of this is like how to tell if you're doing something out of fear. I realized there was fear looped into my pricing strategy because I didn't have a structure to build upon, to use, and that's what I created, was my own personal structure that is made up of things that I personally care about and I think are important. I realized that some of the pricing was out of fear because I'm trying to make my business my full-time business. Well, I have for a year and a half done that. And it's hard to create offerings and price things when you're like trying to make a certain amount of money. And as an entrepreneur, it feels more so that things aren't always constant or consistent or promised to you, right? Even though, like, I learned from my last job, they could let you go at any time. It doesn't matter. Nothing is stable. um, but it's perceived, right? Stability. But anyways, I realized like a lot of the pricing was out of fear. It's like a lot of coaches are like, just price higher. I see this pattern of like coaches working, or practitioners working for a year doing a thing and then saying like, now that I've worked for a year, I'm going to raise my rates. And I think that there's like a difference between like a cost of living, increase, or like I've had experience increase, and it feels more so motivated like, I've struggled at this reasonable price rate, or this price rate that's a little bit too low, and I really just want to start making six figures already, or over $100,000, or whatever their like thing is, the millionaire, like that's what a lot of business coaches talk about, how to do it quickly. And I think that it's this kind of like strategy of, well, then just charge more money, because actually you're not charging more money because you've learned and gone through new training or have new certifications, or it's a cost of living increase, but you're just charging more money because you just want to make more money quickly. And I think that I realized there is some unethicalness in that. And for me, how to tell if you're doing something out of fear came up around this, because it was like, maybe I should get a part-time job to help supplement some of my like just anxieties around like not having enough money. Even though I've been doing this for a year and a half and I have had enough money to pay all my bills, it's not like to feel comfortable, right? So I I was like, well, maybe I'll get a part-time job just, to have some extra money to help like pay for things and feel like I have extra money to spend. And then after I made that decision, I started to see like how many decisions in my business were made out of fear. Um, and the pricing kind of like tied into that. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I pricing at this? Like, actually, I truly don't want to price it at this rate. I don't think that it's like ethical or reasonable or whatever. And I created my own system, but it helped me to like see like where I was working out of fear versus where I felt like aligned, or where I felt like this is reasonable or ethical or whatever words you want to say. And so like the advice that kind of came through for that, where it's like, how do I tell if I'm doing something out of fear? I really love doing these thought experiments, I guess, with people, where it's like, my favorite one that people actually do a lot is like with the lottery. So in like the US, I don't know about outside of the US, but in the US we have like a lottery, which is like people pay a couple of dollars and they get a lottery ticket with like random numbers on it, or you can pick the numbers, and like each week they draw like randomly from like this kind of like bingo style thing, and if you have the matching numbers, you win the lottery of money, like the free parking on Monopoly. Like it's like 33 million dollars, $70 million. There's like more than one kind of lottery. um and and not every state participates in that in the US, but the lottery is kind of like a big American dream thing for people in the US. And so people are always talking about, what would you do if you won the lottery, right? Like, what would you do if you didn't have to pay? Basically, you didn't have to work, you didn't have to pay for anything, and worry about where the money is going to come from. You had like oodles and oodles of money, like more than you could ever need. And so one question that I always liked that I feel like helps to answer if you're doing something out of fear is kind of like, so if you won the lottery, what would you be doing with your life? Like, would you still be charging this amount in your business? Would you still be offering this thing in your business? Would you still be living in the place where you're living? Would you still be married to that person? Would you still be dating that person? Would you, still be dressing that way? Would you still be whatever, right? So that's like kind of like something that I like to do, and I would offer for you to tell if you're doing something out of fear, is to like understand where maybe the fear is or the shortcoming is, around the decision that you're making, and like ask yourself like the opposite question. So like, if I'm just like, man, I gotta charge more money, like in my business I'm not making enough money, like if you know the reasoning for like charging more money is because you're not making enough money, like keep exploring that. Like, why do I feel like I'm not making enough money? Like, oh, because I'm worried that I won't be able to pay my bills. Like, oh, that's a fear, right? That's where the fear is. So it's like, now ask myself, like, if I didn't have this, if I had all my bills paid for the month, like, would I actually be offering this? No, right? Like, and of course it can be non-money motivated. That's just like my personal example. You can definitely, see like, oh, is this obligation motivated? Like, would I actually be dating this person if my parents didn't exist? No, actually I'm doing this out of obligation because I think that my parents want me to date somebody from my same culture and marry somebody who is a doctor or something like that, right? So there's some options, like some wiggle room in there, right? Like asking yourself questions like, if I won the lottery, if I won $30 million, what would I do? What would I be wanting to do? um how would I feel around that? Or you can ask yourself like the opposite, like, if this thing was paid for, then would I still be making this money decision this way? If this like obligation was removed, would I still be doing living my life the same way? So that's kind of like a way to tell if you're doing something out of fear, is to like, whenever you're making a decision, think about the opposite, right? Like, do I want to buy this couch? And you're like, no, no, I can't really make a decision. And it's like, okay, if I didn't have to pay for this couch, somebody else bought it for me, would I get this couch? Oh, hell yeah, I love this couch. It's just really expensive. Like, that's going to tell you if you're doing it out of fear or not. Like, would I actually buy this dress if I was completely fit or whatever? Oh, yeah, actually, my fear is that I'm going to look ugly in it because I think that I'm fat or whatever. Like there's different questions. It's about like, asking the right questions when it comes to your decisions or your actions or motivations behind your actions, that can help you to see like, is this actually out of fear? And this kind of goes with the last one, like questioning everything periodically. Like, I obviously didn't know that some of my pricing strategy was based out of fear because I was like very much so in it. And that's okay. And that can be like part of the struggle for people is like, how do I know if this is out of fear? So it's like, if you're questioning things periodically, then you're giving yourself space to really look at things objectively to say, actually, yeah, this might be coming from a fearful space. Um, Number four. Oh, actually, it's six things that I wrote. I'm gonna check on the time though. Let's see. Okay. Number four. This one I was reminded of in an inner child healing client session today. And also during in my real life. So this one is kind of like you might feel like you're healed enough to get rid of that boundary that you set. Because, we set boundaries to help with our healing, to help make ourselves feel safe for many other reasons. And sometimes we feel like, you know what, I've moved past this thing enough that I don't think I need that boundary anymore. And this was kind of like reiterated to me. Like we kind of get comfortable with how things are with the boundary. And so we think, actually, I don't need that boundary anymore, right? It's like if you take medication for depression and then you forget, this is like a hyperbole, and then you forget, and then you're like, you know what, actually, I don't think I'm depressed anymore. And then you stop taking the medication, right? So it's like, no, the medication was helping you to feel not depressed. So that's not the case, right? So this was kind of illustrated to me with my relationship with my father. So we have a pretty like traumatic colored past, and we have a very specific relationship that I have created a lot of structure and taken my power back, and I kind of call the shots in the relationship because of the harm that I endured as a child. I didn't want to have a relationship with my father, and he didn't really like that, and he at one point was like, please, I'm surrendering my power to you, like I'll do anything, I just want to have a relationship with you. And so it was for me at that point, after going through healing and stuff, because this was like college, that I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to set certain boundaries, and this is how our relationship is going to go, because this is how I feel comfortable. If you actually want to have a relationship with me, these are the terms. And I knew that because of the way that my dad was raised and who he is as a person, I would never have that kind of like father parent or father kid relationship. And I was kind of too old for him to be able to do a lot of those things to establish that kind of relationship. Anyways, and I knew it's only going to be a certain level, right, of depth. And I was okay with that. That was the boundary that I set. But I think now that we have a better relationship where I call him multiple times a week and we talk, I mean, we still talk about like specific things, right? There's still boundaries there. Um, I kind of let my guard down a little because I was like, oh, I'm really excited. He was coming to visit, and I was like, yay, like I'm actually like okay with seeing you, and I'm not having a really strong guard seeing you in person. And I didn't realize until after he left from that trip that my inner child got pretty hurt by some of the things that happened, by him just being himself. He wasn't doing anything um mean or malicious. There were no fights or things like that. It was just some of his actions left like me feeling icky, left me feeling bad and sad about myself, like how I did as a kid based off of the actions that that he had. And it just reminded me that I have these boundaries for a reason. I have these protections for a reason. And I thought that everything was like okay, that I was like at a good enough place in the relationship to like let my guard down a little. And it just reminded me of the reason why I had that boundary in the first place, and to remember like my first priority in the relationship is to protect myself and not to like entertain other people, right? And this kind of boundary, like this thing with boundaries came up as well, like with my clients in the inner child verse. Like we work together to help them to heal from trauma from their life, more specifically in their childhood, but just in general, it's not only inner child stuff that comes up sometimes. And I help them like take their power back, feel validated, fully understand their emotions, and set boundaries and learn better coping mechanisms so that they can move through their adult life without these things affecting them consistently, right? Especially with like other family members. And I I was reminded of this stuff with my dad prior to this session, and then in the session, my guides were like, make sure you say this to your client. Like, it might feel good in the moment because we did the healing work on our own, like without that person, without that situation, that environment. And so we're feeling good because we're not currently in the environment, and we did work to heal, to shift whatever, came through, what needed to be. And now we're feeling good. So maybe we're past that. We don't need that. And a lot of people like operate that way, and that's when we get into these like negative thought patterns around like shame and guilt around like I thought I was healed, but I guess I'm not. And, like I thought everything was okay and I thought I would never have to deal with this again. And that is kind of like this fallacy that healing is like a finite thing, that once we're healed with it, we're done. And really the point of like healing is to expand your threshold of tolerance for things, to learn new coping mechanisms, to expand your self love and your self acceptance and care and your ability to handle when these things come up. That's really what it's about, right? And so a lot of us, my guides were reminding me to say, like, if you're now, oh, I healed myself with that family member, and then you go to see that family member and you feel like you're put all the way back into square one, that's like a normal response from your body to say like all these years I have operated on this program, and this is familiar to me, so I'm just going to revert back to this program when I'm in the presence of this person. And so even though we heal in the safety of our healing containers, of our community, etc., we still need to be cognizant that the boundaries that we want to enact and create are for a reason, because we're human and we're learning, and it takes practice with that person, especially if they did like intense harm to you, to uphold that boundary, to uphold that new belief, and not slide back into oh, I'm not healed, I thought I was healed. It's like, yeah, you're healing, you're making progress, but you were faced with something that you didn't have practice for. You were faced with a tough, thing that you didn't prepare for, like going into it. And that's kind of what happened for me. Usually I'll protect and prepare for it mentally and emotionally, and I didn't, right? And then I got in my feels afterwards about it. I got a little butt hurt. um so that is kind of like something I just wanted to remind to y'all. Like, if you are doing work and you feel like you are getting re-triggered, or you're not doing it right, or there's no progress, it's a process, right? Your body is reacting with the thing that feels the best and safest and most familiar to it in the moment. And like, if you're doing something new, it's going to take some time, and it's better to like prepare ahead of time for it than to be in it and be like, oh, dang it, now I have to go back to the drawing board. And it's like, maybe not. Maybe you just need to practice more with what you wanted, that boundary you set. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Okay, number five. Number five is a hard one for me that I'm still trying to do. Um, that self care isn't always the comforting thing, especially if you grew up learning not so good coping mechanisms. So, self care, like, let's put the capitalistic self care industry like in the box, like face masks, buy a thing to pamper yourself. Pampering is like one facet of self care, right? And I think that a lot of us view self care, or we're taught that self care is something that is like comforting, something that lets us off easy, quote unquote. Like things like, not going out when you're not feeling good, staying in bed if like you have a headache or something, or like eating the food that's a comfort food for you as opposed to like eating the quote unquote healthy food. Doing a face mask, taking a bath, like taking, doing things for yourself, etc., etc. those are all things that are like seen as like, I would say, societally acceptable and mainstream for self-care. But I saw this post a while ago saying, sometimes self-care is like doing the hard thing. It's not doing the thing that makes us feel good in the moment, but it's the thing that like is setting us up for success or for deeper self-love or self-acceptance in the long run, right? And I think as an American society, we're obsessed with things happening immediately, and we want the easy way out. We want the easiest option. And so that can be very alluring for us. And for a lot of us, we have not even learned how to do those things to pamper ourselves, that it's okay to take rest, right? Those are all like productivity, capitalism things. But not a lot of people talk about that. Like sometimes self care is doing the thing that we don't want to do in the moment, or that feels like, you know, dragging us to do, and that can be something that I'm learning, like, because I saw that and I was like, that makes sense, yeah, right, like working out, maybe I'm tired, or maybe I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this, but then afterwards I feel really good, right? That's like a common example that people use for this, working out, or like setting a boundaries, ending a friendship, a breakup. Those can be like things for self-care that don't always feel easy in the moment. Going to bed early as opposed to staying up late and then being tired the next day, like setting yourself up for success, things that are like looking into the future and saying, how can I support future me? And, with the things that I have access to with present me. But something that was kind of further illustrated as I'm like been diving into this work and belief is kind of like, sometimes we can think something is self care, but actually it's like our coping mechanisms masquerading as self-care. And that's what people view as, I guess, like self-sabotage a lot. Like they think like, I'm self-sabotaging myself. And really what I see it as is like, I learned a coping mechanism from my childhood that has served me pretty well, right? If I'm still alive now, it has served me, because my goal was to survive as a kid. um, and so this feels like the familiar thing, the easy thing, the habit to fall back on. And so that easy, oh, it's the easy way out, it's the comforting thing, kind of feels like self care, right? Because you're like, that feels hard and I don't want to do the hard thing right now. So I'm going to do the self care thing, right? That's kind of how we're taught self care works. And when you pair that with, that new change is weird for me, I'm going to stick with my old coping mechanism that has served me thus far in life, or has worked 80% of the time, so I can trust it. Um, then we get into these weird like habits where we think that it's self-care, but it's actually just reinforcing a coping mechanism that is not the best for us. So my example for this, um, is I have this crazy like habit of staying up late for no fucking reason, literally no reason. And I know like inner child me used to stay up late so that they could have some alone time and feel good in the household that they grew up in, that they did not want to be in and did not feel safe in. Um, and to like do some things without being like consistently yelled at or the door open on them, or just have some like just existing and feeling normal time. And so I feel like my inner child definitely wants to perpetuate this coping mechanism of, oh, I'm going to stay up super late because I get to just be alone and do whatever. And oh, it's self care to relax on the couch and watch TV really late, or to play video games because it's nostalgic or whatever. Or I like playing video games. When like I would argue, maybe self care is going to bed at a decent time so that you can wake up at a decent time and not feel groggy and not like be late for things, and be able to tackle those things that you want to do that make you feel better in the morning, like stretching or working out or journaling, etc., whatever the morning routine is. So I kind of wanted to like iterate this point as a way to say like, you know, there is a lot of like shame and guilt around like the thoughts of self sabotage, and this like consistent, why am I like this? Why can't I just go to bed at a reasonable time? Why do I need to stay up? I'm not staying up to force myself to do a task, to do something for work, for school, etc. Like, why do I just find myself sitting here on the couch for hours at night? And then I'm like sort of enjoying it, but then I'm sort of like blaming myself at the same time. And so you're not like fully enjoying the experience, anyways. That would be quote unquote self care, right? Because you're like feeling guilty for it. And so I just wanted to bring that up to kind of like give you that food for thought, right? Of, is this actually like a coping mechanism, a trauma response, an old program? And I'm thinking that it's self care because it just feels easier to do it versus like, is this part of what I want to provide, the experience I want to provide for myself? Is this part of like the rules that I set up for what does self-love or self-acceptance look like? And is that helping to perpetuate that, or is it the opposite, right? And I think that that requires us to do some deeper thinking about, what does self-care actually mean to us? Like, if I were to take care of myself, what does that truly look like? How do I set myself up for success? What does that truly look like? um so yeah. And then number 6 is to give yourself the opportunity to check in and be truly honest with yourself. This kind of goes with the questioning everything, which I think might be a little bit harder for some people to do. But with this questioning of everything, when I was looking at like my pricing in my business, I also looked at my offerings and what everything I was doing, right? Like how I talked in the beginning of the podcast episode, I'm going to be changing the Patreon yet again, right? Um, because I was looking at all of the things that I was giving myself responsibility for and creating like necessity in my life. I need to do this. I need to create that experience. Oh, I should do this. Oh, that. And I literally sat down and I was like, let's be honest with yourself. Be brutally, truly honest. And I wrote down the things, all the things that I was doing or wanted to do. And I wrote, like, do you actually, and I asked myself, do you actually truly want to do this? Like, is this something that actually brings you joy? Is this something that you're actually excited to do? Is maybe it's something that you just have, I don't actually truly want to pay rent, but I have to, right? There's obviously some exceptions, but even in asking yourself that, like, that can still provide answers for what is important to you and what isn't important to you, right? Even if you're forced to do it, it's maybe over time you can change it, right? Like, I don't actually want to pay rent, so maybe I will seek a sugar daddy over time. I'm just kidding. Um, but yeah, I think that giving yourself time and space to be brutally honest about what it is that you're doing in your life and if you actually want to do it. Like deep down, even if you don't tell anybody or change anything, that was really, really hard for me to do because it required me to look at the facts of like, actually, no, I'm just doing this out of fear. Actually, no, I'm just doing this out of obligation because everybody else is doing it, so I think that I should, right? And it really freed up a lot for me to answer those questions that I felt like I was just avoiding these tasks. I was procrastinating, prolonging them. Like if that's like a good sign for you, right? Like if you're avoiding the task, if you're every time you sit down to do the task, you start doing something else. Instead, you're always like saying, oh, I need to do this. Oh, I keep forgetting to do this. And then like you put it off, you procrastinate till the last minute. Like that can be kind of like a feedback loop for you. Like, actually, no, I don't want to do this. This isn't something that I care about. And this can be like tasks or it can also be programs, right? Like I help my clients, defining like what is actually important to them. Did somebody else teach them this and they're just perpetuating it, or do they actually want to give precedence and like power to this thing? Like earlier I was talking about that capitalistic belief that I should turn everything into a business idea because it could potentially make me money. And it's like, actually, I don't want to buy into that. Like, I don't want everything to be a potential like business idea. Some things I want for myself. And so like that can be like part of like the programming that you can look at. Like if it's like, I should do this, why am I not like this, why am I the way that I am about this thing? Like, ugh, I'm doing this thing again, I don't like it, like oh my God, I have to do this task and I never want to do it, or like you're just feeling like actual resistance in your body around it, this can be a opportunity to check in if it's like truly what you want to do. And I think this would be great to pair with like the self-care thing, right? Because sometimes I don't want to do the thing, but then if I ask myself if this is this something I truly want to do, yeah, actually I do want to work out more often so that I can feel like less lethargic and I can feel like more tired at the end of the night. And like as an Aries moon, I like to move my body and just like connect with my body and move the energy through my body more. So it's like, yeah, actually I do want to do it, but right now I'm just having a lot of resistance to like showing up for myself. And like that may be the truly brutally honest thing, as opposed to like, I guess I don't want to work out, so I'm just going to do self-care and like not work out and like have a rest day, even though I've never worked out for the, X amount of days, and it's like all of them were rest days. Like that can be like the truly honest thing. Or like I keep buying these salad kits and I'm never eating them and I end up throwing them away. Like, how about instead of trying to be healthy, let me be brutally honest with myself. Why do I keep buying these? Oh, I think I should be healthy. Do I actually like these? Do I actually want to eat these? No, I don't. So I'm just not going to buy them. And I'll buy other foods that maybe are still partially healthy, or some kind of whatever vegetables. And like, be honest. Like, I don't like eating vegetables. This is clearly okay. I just want to say on record, I like eating vegetables. I'm just using this as an example. I did used to buy a lot of salad things. I don't like eating salad for everything. I do like eating vegetables, but it's like that's how I was honest with myself. Like, what vegetable do you want to eat then? I love broccoli. I freaking love broccoli. I would eat broccoli every meal if I could. Okay, so eat that, or like you can buy those like green supplements or things like that. Like, actually, no, I don't like eating vegetables. I'll buy the powder thing, put it in my drink and drink it so I can get some nutrients, right? Um, so like just doing things like that, like the more you're honest with yourself and why certain things are panning out for you, the more you can, all of this kind of ties together, right? Like I feel like all of my lessons are like tying together, obviously, right? For me. Um, but the more you can be brutally honest, the more you can find out, like, what is the motivating thing for this? Is this a program? Like, is this a boundary I need to create? Like, all these answers will become easier. And it's hard to be, like I said, it was hard for me to be brutally honest because there was a lot of stuff tied into it, right? Like, if I am brutally honest, I don't want to offer this, but now I'm scared that I won't make money, like, so that helps to reveal these underlying things. And it can free you by actually admitting it, or writing it down or saying it, um because then you can create something that you do want to do that could make you money, instead of forcing yourself to do something that, because you think it'll make you money, but nobody's buying it anyway, so who are you fooling, right? Yourself. And I mean me, I'm talking about me. I did that. So yeah, like, hopefully, look at that, 57 minutes, freaking amazing. Hopefully all of these things tied together make sense and provide insights and can help you in some type of way in your life, and hopefully you survived Mercury retrograde, learning things as opposed to just feeling like you were getting your ass handed to you left and right, having some good meaty pieces to walk away with for moving forward, like how I, and convincing myself that I did, because I'm sharing it with you all. That helps with my accountability. And I'm really excited for the new questions. So don't forget, there's going to be new opportunities, new ways to support me financially for this. There won't be the boxes after this moving forward, except for Emma, who's the real, and will probably, I don't mind making them a box forever and ever and ever, because I did make merch and it is in the link in bio, and it'll be in the show notes. And then number 3, there will be a link in the bio and in the show notes for the submissions of topics, of possible guests, of questions that you would like me to answer at the end of the solo episodes. And it was really, I just want to say, it's really hard not to look at myself when I'm recording. So hopefully I'm just not like, hey, I'm speaking to me the whole time. Until next time, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Witchy and Weird Pod. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, follow us on the socials under Witchy and Weird Pod. And if you want to stay in contact with our host, Amanda, follow them on IG under Amanda Sakratoff Intuitive and Twitter and TikTok under Amanda Sakratoff. And if you love Witchy and Weird Pod and want to support all that we do, become a patron and get access to exclusive benefits like discounts on merch, bonus content, and woo-woo experiences. As usual, everything is linked in the show notes. Bye!